Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome back to this course on architectural thesis. My name is Dr. Vishal Chettry and I am working as an assistant professor in the Department of Architecture, Planning and Design at IIT BHU Varanasi. So now let us look into the content of this particular presentation. We will start with the importance of visual and verbal integration, then we will cover the details about balancing and visual text, and then we will also understand on how to organize the appendices, proofreading and editing services, avoiding plagiarism, ensuring the report coherence, and then the conclusion of this entire presentation. So to understand the importance of visual and verbal integration, it is always it is essential to enhance the clarity and comprehension. That means the visuals should simplify the complex information, making it easier to grasp at the first glance. So that is why visuals are very essential in your thesis report. And in architecture we have always tried to understand the importance of visuals. So we have been told by the professors, by our faculty members since the day one, that in architecture visuals are the only effective way to communicate your idea, because when you present your idea in terms of word, it may be perceived in different senses. For example, if I just tell you that I have a very unique idea related to designing a particular community center. So in that way, if I write I will include such and such factor within the designing of community center in some city. So probably in these sentences one will not get clarity in how that idea will be perceived in terms of the built form or the connectivity between the spaces. But if you try to show that same information through visuals, so one will obviously understand the linkages between your idea and that to the concept or that to the idea that is there behind the design process. So that is why it is very essential to add visuals in your design, and these visuals enhances the clarity and comprehension in your design. It supports the arguments with evidences, graphs, charts, images, strengthen and written claims by providing concrete data or the illustration. So this is where it is essential. Engages readers through the visual learning. Many readers are visual learners. That means they will just look into the images and perceive what is written in the text, and it integrates diagrams and figures, keeps them engaged and interested. Reduces the cognitive overload. Balanced use of visuals prevents long dense text blocks and helps readers process information more efficiently. So this is where it becomes very essential, because the overload, because these days we go through numerous information either through WhatsApp or through different social media channels, or if you just scroll the mobile phone, your mobile phone, you will always be overloaded with some or the other information about the recent changes or recent times. So there is some kind of burden in our mind. So to reduce that burden, if you add images or if you use images to explain your ideas, so that if that is how you try to represent your idea, it will effectively communicate to the person who is there to review your work or who is reading your work. So this is where it becomes very essential to add visuals in your report and minimize the text content in your sheets. but in your report you have to always explain the process. So you have to add the images that you have used in your sheet, but at the same time provide an explanation, because sometimes some readers expect explanation to the particular visual or explanation to a particular step that you have taken. So all these explanation has to be written in the report itself. It bridges complex ideas into simple visuals. Conceptual diagrams, flow charts and infographics connects abstract theories with practical understanding. Visuals like diagrams showing text and visuals provides better understanding to the person. Balancing visuals with text. So avoid text heavy slides or sections. This is applicable for your sheets. So too much text overwhelms readers. Breaking the content into concise point is essential in your sheets, but in the report you are expected to explain the process or steps in detail in a very clear and effective way, and provide explanation to the visuals. Ensure visuals add meaning, not just decoration. Every chart, diagram or figure should support or clarify the argument that is there. Use visuals to summarize, not replace or explanation to your report writing process. Figures highlight key trends, but interpretation must be in the text. So in your report, along with figures, there is always it is always essential that you also add explanation to the images. Maintain consistency in style, colors and scale. So standardized formatting improves professionalism and readability. So always maintain similarity in the way you add the images. So if you are using if you are adding your images within your report or within your sheets in a portrait format, so try to have all the images in that particular format. Or if you are adding a particular border to the images, so try to maintain the consistency, the way the figures are numbered, so that also has to be in some order. So maintain the consistency, and if there is any text that is appearing in the image itself, then the text should also be in the same format as being seen in the other images also. So that is where there has to be consistency in style, colors and the scale of the images. Follow the 60-40 rules for your sheets, that is text versus visuals. Around 60% text and 40% visuals. Ensure balance without overloading either side. Captions and cross-referencing. So to add captions for your image is essential, because it provides an explanation that what information or what are you exactly trying to convey to the readers through that particular image. So this is where providing captions to the image becomes very essential. It provides a concise, informative and self-explanatory. That means your image becomes very informative. It has some brief explanation and becomes very self-explanatory. That means you need not go back to the particular section where this image is referred and then read the entire paragraph or section to understand what is being conveyed through this image. So if you add caption to the image, so it itself is sufficient to understand the meaning. Describe what the figure or table shows, not just repeat the title of the image. So this is what should be the explanation for the figure or table. Provide numbering for easy references. So for example, if you are adding images in chapter number 1, so your figure number should always be in this order: figure 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 and so on. If you are adding figure in chapter 2, then your figure numbering should be figure 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and so on. And with respect to sections also, you can create the figure numbering there. Always refer to figures or tables in text. So this is very important. Many times it has been observed that you add the figures, you follow every best practice for adding figures, and also you add the labeling to the figure. But then when it comes to refer that figure in the text, it goes missing. So to understand and to put context to that image, so where should that image be referred, and because when you refer an image within the text, it helps in easy cross referencing. It helps you communicate that entire text through visual very effectively when you have explanation and then the same image is also being shown. So this is why adding and referencing, cross referencing the images is very essential in this case. Maintain consistent numbering sequence. This should be there. It should not be such that after figure 1 we are just randomly we are seeing figure 6 or figure 10, and then figure 2 is somewhere in your last few chapters. So that should not be the case. There has to be always consistency in numbering the figures. So use automatic cross referencing in MS Word for updates. So this is also very important. So cross referencing helps in in preparing that list of figures section in your report. So this is where it becomes very essential. Then organizing the appendices. So the purpose of organizing appendices is to store supporting but non-essential materials, what to include. So all the raw data pertaining to your thesis, like for example if you have completed some survey, or if you have gone through some interviews, so all these information, the survey questionnaire, so these things, the details about your site visits or your case study, if it is not possible to add all these details within the report, try to add all these informations in your appendices. So your rough sketches, rough drawings, if you are able to add partly in your thesis report, but still you do not have that much of space, or if the page numbers within the report is being limited by the institute, so you can add all these in your appendices. So you can label the appendices like the appendix A mentions the survey questionnaire, and the appendix B gives the interview questions that were asked, appendix C lists the conceptual images or the rough sketches of your sheet. So like that you can prepare your appendixes. Then refer in text. Example, you have to also, just as mentioned before, for figures and tables, it is mandatory that you refer, or you highlight that particular image or table in the text. Similarly, appendixes for appendix A, B, C and so on has to be highlighted in your text, in your report, wherever you add the reference of that particular appendix. For example, if you are writing the case study section, so probably there you can highlight the for other relevant details you can refer appendix C, or appendix C highlights details about the such and such content of your case study. So you can mention it that way, and if the reader is interested to further understand about that case study or about the site visit, so the appendices can be a source to refer the details about those aspects. Keep concise and relevant, avoid overloading with unnecessary content, and at the same time you also have to be careful that no unnecessary content is being added. For example, if you have referred a paper from any source, or if you have referred any document, so don't add that entire paper and document as an appendix. So that can be referred from your references section itself, where you will highlight the source and you will add the relevant details, and the same can be referred by the readers to understand the details about that project. Then is the important stage, that is proofreading and editing strategies. So proofreading, the focus here is on surface level correction. So proofreading is just based on the text that is written within the report. So there will be not much corrections within the drawings and within the details of your thesis, but it will be just on the explanation that is written within the report. You should also check grammar, spelling, punctuation and formatting errors within the proofreading section or proofreading part of your thesis. So to do that, you can either use the automatic corrections that are there in your MS Word software, or you can use Grammarly software or Grammarly this web page. That is, if your institute has subscription to Grammarly, you can use the plugin of Grammarly and then try to rectify the grammatical and spelling error mistakes that are observed in the thesis. And also when you choose a particular language for your thesis, for example, if you are using English is also there in in different countries. It is spoken in different types. So English in America is spoken and written slightly different than English in UK or in English in India. So the language that you have used for your report has to be consistent. So from page 1 to the last page, it should all be within the same language. So that also has to be followed. Then is the editing part. So the focus here is on to ensure that there is overall clarity and readability within the report. It should your report should the corrections regarding the editing improves the flow, logical structure, coherence and the academic tone of your thesis. So the key strategies here includes you should read aloud to spot awkward phrasing. So this is very important, and I personally use this feature. There is a read aloud feature in your MS Word. You can activate by just going into the options or somewhere within the software. For that you can refer the detailed tutorials that are there in the YouTube and try to hear what that software is reading. Or when you read yourself, you may not be able to find that awkward phrasing by your own, but if someone else reads that paragraph, you will be able to understand the awkwardness or some mistakes that are found in the punctuation or in the phrasing of the sentences. So that is where read aloud features helps you in this case. So peer review for fresh perspectives, that means, for example, if you are if you have a very good friend who have recently graduated, or if you have a senior who has recently graduated and has some time to go through your report, so just hand over the report to them and get their feedback. And also you can ask feedback from your thesis mentor or supervisor by asking them to look into the report and suggest the corrections over there. So use digital tools as already suggested, Grammarly, MS Word Review, track changes. So all these features can be used to align or to have a very consistent proofreading process. Maintain version control. So this is essential. Try to label your Word file versions accordingly. Do not delete the old files, because the old files may be helpful in case if you want to go back and see the see some sections which you have deleted by mistake in the current file. So this is where maintaining version control is very essential. Avoiding plagiarism. So already it has been emphasized that what are different ways and what are the consequences if you fall into this trap of a plagiarism. So plagiarism is presenting someone else's text, images or even the ideas as your own without proper acknowledgement. So that is a very big mistake that that may occur by sometimes by knowingly or sometimes by unknowingly also. But when you get to know that you have seen similar images or similar ideas, so try to give them due credit to the main author. So add references over there, go add in text citation, and along with that also make a consistent effort that you avoid plagiarism over there by adding adding references or by adding in-text citation. At the same time, if you do paraphrasing, that is also very essential, because though you add the source from where you have referred, but you can't add this exact sentence from that particular report, because then the originality or then the report writing process becomes redundant. It doesn't have any weightage if you just copy the information from different sources, and then no matter you add the sources over there or not, there is no originality. So that is why you have to avoid the similarity level and as institutes recommends, it has to be within that percentage. So for some instance the institute allows up to 15, somewhere it's 10, or somewhere it's even 20%. So within that limit you should maintain the similarity level. So you can use softwares like Turnitin, Authenticate, and there are other softwares like Urkund which are available to detect the plagiarism or similarity in this case. So what does plagiarism include? It includes copy pasting without citation, using figures, tables or graphics without credit, paraphrasing ideas without referencing the original source. So these all are the types of plagiarism. So to avoid this you have to go through some solutions are provided here. So for example, paraphrase with citation. So you have to add citation, you have to mention the source, but at the same time paraphrase the information. That means you have to write the information in your own language or in your own word. Use quotation marks for direct quotes. So if you are using the exact sentences from any specific source, so try to add quotation. So in that way you are clearly mentioning that this sentence is being referred from this particular source, and you have not referred, or you have not added, or you are not considering that sentence as your own. So cite visuals, figures and data sources. Always acknowledge the original creator. So whatever visuals, figures you are using, in case you are not able to draw those images, so try to add the sources for those images, so that tomorrow when your work is published or when your work is there in internet, so no one actually claims that image is being claimed by this person, whereas it is my own work that I have done. So to avoid that, you should cite visuals, figures and the data sources. Follow proper referencing style. In this case, be consistent. Use APA, MLA, Chicago, IEEE or any other referencing style that is being suggested by your institute. Now to ensure the coherence in the report, so maintain consistent formatting. That means you have to use uniform fonts, heading styles, numbering and spacing throughout the report. So this is important in case of writing report, because when you write informations or when you write explanation to the work that you've done in your thesis, you have to maintain the uniformity. It should not be a case where the very first page of your report is written in some other text style, then when you come to the chapters it is all written in different font, or the writing style has been changed completely over there. The heading style, the numbering and all, like if you are underlining the heading, it has to be all the headings within the report has to be underlined. So likewise, if you are using any special way of adding the information, so the same approach has to be followed within the report, so that there is consistency in the formatting. So the consistent formatting binds the report as a single entity. It doesn't look like that, it doesn't gives a glimpse that part of the report is written by some person, part of the report is written by some other person. So that should not be the case, isn't it? So that is why you should have consistent formatting within your report. So ensure logical flow between the sections, connect the introduction, methodology, results, discussion in a smooth sequence. So all the sections should have, so what I generally follow in such case is that, and I suggest my students also to add the last paragraph of each chapter has to provide some glimpse of either it should add the summary of what the work is done, at the same time what is being what will be covered in the next presentation or in the next your chapter. So that also has to be added in the report. So this is where it is essential to add such a logical flow sections or logical flow parts within the section, so that the reader is able to connect between the two different chapters very easily. So what is summarized at the end and what is to be found out in the next chapter. So all that information is very clearly communicated over there. So check all figures, tables are cited and explained. So ensure this no figure or table should stand alone without explanation in the text. So this has to be followed properly, as already mentioned before, that if you have added any figure, table, chart within the report and you have added the description to that also by adding a label to that image or that particular table, but if you are not referring it in the text, that means it doesn't have any use in your report. So for what purpose is that image, or what purpose does that table has in the report? So that is not clear if you don't add it in the text. So you have to cite that figure 5.7 refers to such and such visual or such and such drawing, or table 4.7 explains about the case study comparative chart. So like that you have to use that in your paragraph and then explain the information about that table or image in a very proper order. So this is where it is essential that you check all figures, tables are cited and explained very correctly within the report. Verify consistency in terminology and abbreviation. So define terms once, use abbreviations consistently. So this is one very important aspect to be followed. So when you add abbreviation in the report, so wherever it is going to come up in the very first place, so try to add the full form of that abbreviation over there, and later on you can just use the abbreviation, because wherever because the reader reads the report page 1 onwards. It's not that randomly one reads the page 2 or just goes through the chapter 4 or chapter 5 and then the details. So if the details or if any abbreviation is coming at the beginning and you provide the details about those explanation about that abbreviation, then the reader can understand what that explanation, what that abbreviation is at the later stage. So one need not write the explanation to that abbreviation each and everywhere it is going to come up. Okay, so that is why explaining at the very first instance is essential and is a very good practice to follow. Align report with research objectives and conclusions. So ensure that your final discussion answers the research questions and objectives stated in the introduction. So that means your discussion section or the last conclusion chapter that you prepare for your thesis report should align with the report objectives and the research question. So whatever questions you had when you prepared when you prepared your thesis, so that has to be answered, or how those questions have been answered, you will get an idea about these aspects only in the conclusion chapter, because that is where you will try to comprehend the entire thesis work. So you will mention that these were the research questions and you have achieved or you have answered to those research questions through the particular design approach. So that approach has to be highlighted, and then how you have ensured that you have achieved the aim or objective. So that also explanation to those questions or those aspects can be answered through the conclusion chapter. So the conclusion of this entire presentation can be summarized as: it is a balanced integration of text and visuals. It is a key to have consistency in report. Captions and cross referencing improves the readability. Appendices provide extra but relevant details. Proofreading and editing ensures professional quality. Avoid plagiarism to maintain academic integrity. Coherence ties all the elements together. So your report has to be coherent, so that the information that you have provided in the report can be connected with each other. So these are some resources for further reading, and with this I'd like to conclude this presentation, and thank you for your patience listening.